Welcome to the Asian Dating Podcast. I'm your host, May Bugenhagen. I run a boutique matchmaking company called Two Asian Matchmakers. It started in Los Angeles back in 2009, and today I help men all across the US meet women who want to be in a relationship, get married, have kids, and all that good stuff. And every week or two, I invite another matchmaker or someone in the dating field. And this week I have Amy Andersen. She is a very high-end matchmaker in the Silicon Valley. And she's been in this business for over 20 years, I think 21 years to be exact. And today we're just going to talk about dating. So Amy, welcome to the show and tell us, how did you get started?
Well, thank you so much, May, for having me. I'm delighted to be here chatting with you today. I've been really looking forward to this. So I got started. I was a young, aspiring entrepreneur living in Silicon Valley back in 2000 timeframe. So a really long time ago. It's crazy. I have to pinch myself and be like, oh my gosh, I'm either aging myself saying that or I don't know what's going on, but it was a long time ago. And that is when, in my life, in my personal life, I was in a really serious relationship with a gentleman who was about 10 years older than me. So I was like 22 at the time. And I was just in love with this man who was 32, 33 or so. And he was kind of this prototypical Silicon Valley nerd who had graduated Stanford University with three master's degrees in less than 2 years. So very ambitious, very, type A and hard charging type of individual that I just had on a pedestal. And back then, he would introduce me to a lot of his single friends. And a lot of his single friends, all of whom were men, would really complain to me about the dating scene in Silicon Valley. And being new in Palo Alto, I was kind of like looking around, wondering what is going on with this area. And I realized that the social landscape in Silicon Valley was very unusual at best. There was a lot of men that I was interfacing with and networking with who seemed to have a very hard time identifying where single women were to date. And that's when I realized I saw a very similar trend up in San Francisco with many of my female contemporaries who couldn't find a good guy to commit to. And so that was really kind of my light bulb moment, my aha moment, kind of the genesis of what became my business Links Dating, bridging that gap and introducing all of the lonely hearts in Silicon Valley to these bright, just entrepreneurial, professional women up in San Francisco. So that was the idea. It was really based on observation and something very unusual that I saw with the landscape in Silicon Valley.
Now, how has dating or your clients differ from 20 years ago until now, or has it?
I would say it's always maintained a very consistent demographic. I've never deviated in terms of the types of clients that I work with. And I still see that there's this same influx of individuals that apply for links dating, which are, I'd say, from a baseline, highly educated individuals, all professionals, dynamic, and importantly, commitment and marriage minded. So that's never changed. There's been slight tweaks here and there, and there's individuals that will email me for membership that are out of Silicon Valley. And that's really then kind of another conversation where I'm trying to figure out if I could best support their needs. But things have really remained consistent in terms of the types of people that I see. I will share that over the years, I've seen a trend in individuals that contact me kind of dating through separation, what becomes dating through divorce, and all the complexities, especially with some of these high profile cases, people that are more in the public eye. It's a really scary time for them to navigate how to even date through that situation. And so I didn't always see that way back when I first started my business, maybe because that type of individual didn't feel that I had the expertise to help them since I was just starting back then. But now I really see that becoming kind of almost in the mainstream in Silicon Valley.
So your clients are men and women, and they range anywhere from 20s all the way to maybe 60s, or
Yeah, so I see the whole spectrum in terms of age, which I love. So definitely the 20s, upward of the 70s. So Lynx is unique compared to some different matchmakers in that I do work with men and women, which I love. And really all ages. Although, if I were to say if there is kind of a median age for women, it's probably late 30s into early 40s. And then for men, it's mid to late 40s for that kind of median age as a client in all different life situations. It is not uncommon for somebody in Silicon Valley and other places, of course, but certainly kind of where I'm based, where people have been laser beam focused with career, and even to backtrack, like their academic career, like getting into the best school or getting into the best program, and just being so focused with that, and then landing the right job and figuring out their way in the professional capacity, and then almost to the detriment of having a personal life, not even like focused on that. And then they kind of wake up at a certain age, say 37 and 38, realizing, oh my gosh, like I've gotten my dream job. I have all these things. I have a great network of friends from my alma mater. Oh, I think I want a baby and I think I want to get married. How do I even do that? Oh my gosh. So that's like something I definitely see with individuals in this area where they've been so focused on academics and career and not even thinking about dating till a later stage in life, which I think is great.
yeah. Now, the men that you work with who are super successful, accomplished in their field, maybe they're type A at their jobs, maybe not. Are they also looking for someone who's well educated from a great school, university? Do they want type A women also, or no?
I'd say case by case basis. So that really depends. And I can kind of think through different client searches that I'm currently representing right now, but I'd say it really depends on the individual. I would say that man, if I were to create a broad brushstroke, more universal response, it is that those men are looking for a woman who definitely is intelligent. Not everybody who has a certain kind of degree from a certain Ivy League or Stanford is looking for kind of their counterpart in that regard. I'd say, though, the baseline is intelligence, and that can have so many different definitions for these men, right? It could be a woman who has an incredible street smart aspect, right? Just a wherewithal from living in the world and like understanding how to like cope and like survive, right? And that can be really, really attractive. Certainly the actual IQ component, yeah, that's very impressive. But not everybody is looking for that. I'd say for many of these men, the emotional intelligence part is very important, especially if they're thinking about raising a family. So balancing their high IQ and maybe lacking EQ for men, but finding a woman who has a more sophisticated emotional intelligence can actually be the perfect match. Now, of course, not to complicate things, some men are definitely really particular about finding a woman who graduated from a certain school, but I'd say that is less so. I think the baseline, smart is sexy, and somebody who can hold her own, somebody who's an interesting person, somebody who's interested in the world and can hold her own in his world as well. That's a big one. That is definitely a very big one. So I think, sometimes I see, women will write me and these women are leading with kind of that Instagram kind of look or kind of, just flaunting their pure physical assets, which look great. But I think they're forgetting that a lot of these men aren't necessarily looking for that. They're looking for something much more holistic, and it starts with the brains. It really does. Yes, the men need to be attracted, and we can kind of get into that, but they definitely need somebody who can hold her own.
So, what advice would you give women out there who are probably really type A, went to an amazing university, and they're accomplished in their own fields? What dating advice would you give them on a date for the men to get to know them and not just their resume?
Yes. Oh, I love that question. So, and this is something that plays out all the time. And actually, I'll speak from my own experience. When I was dating, I was really flexing the resume muscle. I was leading with that. And I felt that I needed to do that to prove my worth and prove myself, and that men wanted to hear that. Men were slightly interested, but at the end of the day, I got to be honest, they really didn't care, right? They were looking at me for something other than a resume, right? And kind of how hard I had worked to kind of like start my business. Again, like it should have been like 1 to 5% of the conversation. Instead, I dominated, just anything I shared with that aspect of my life that I was so proud of, right? So I think for this woman that you are describing, it is never about, discounting how hard a woman's worked or how type A she is, or that she went to Harvard or that she owns her own condo or any of those super impressive things. It's about balancing everything. And I think delivering that information at the right time. I always tell women and men too, but in this case, women, to picture an onion. And on the first date, peel one layer back and share something about yourself, right? And then really lean into the conversation and ask him a question about himself, right? Kind of showing interest in that other individual. And if she finds that her date is really focused too much on kind of his work, then it is actually her job to change conversational tracks. Because, like, for so many of us, I think work can be a comfort zone, especially for men. So it's going to be her job to kind of balance all of her different ways, her smarts with her feminine ways, nurturing ways, and all the different things that make her an interesting person, and kind of showcase, like a peacock, showcase all those different dimensions, but do it slowly and not to necessarily lead with the resume. Remember kind of the time and place. Remember what this is about. This is a date. It's not a job interview. There's a time and place for everything. This is, a cafe setting, and it's not in a boardroom, most likely.
I feel like it's so important to remind the daters out there, men and women, the clients that I send out on these dinner dates or coffee dates or lunch dates or activity dates, that their whole job, I feel like, is to make sure that they're a good dater, they ask good questions, they're engaging. And I feel like the whole point is to try to get a second date, whether you like this person or not. It's almost like a quiz. Like, the more you act like a good dater, you become a good dater, and that person will respond by being also a pleasant person to deal with because you kind of rubbed off on them on that date. But I feel like people don't take that into consideration. If they would just be pleasant, then the other person would be pleasant. And then you might in turn like that person more than you thought because you guys are both interesting adults who are having a great conversation. I feel like that is the best way to give someone a chance.
100%. I love that idea. I also think it's so important in the context of the first date just to really take into account that the person across from you has, if they're working with a matchmaker, they've gone through the process of being vetted and really ensuring that the timing's right. And there's been a lot of checks and balances with that. So really being present on the date and remembering that this person has carved out time for you. So pay that person the respect they deserve by not being distracted, looking into their eyes, being present, genuinely like giving that person a chance. And I think sometimes, like, I'm a big believer in the slow burn effect. I think that if you walk into the first date and you're expecting these giant fireworks and rockets to launch, you're going to be probably disappointed, right? Because that's the stuff that we see in rom-coms. That's the stuff that, are in fairy tales, which are lovely to watch and read about, but is that really reality? So I think if you just kind of go in and sometimes as if, you have the mindset of, I'm going to meet a friend right now. And if you go in with that expectation, and if you start to feel something more than you would towards a friend, like, oh my God, I feel some butterflies in my tummy, and oh, he's actually really cute too, then roll with those emotions. And for women out there, really important. I always tell them, give your date a verbal affirmation. The affirmation is so important to guide your respective date and let him or her know how you're feeling, right? Because that will help bridge the gap and give your date that clarity and permission to ask you out for date two. And that's all what we're trying to do here. Go from date one to date two with ease and not have any ambiguity.
What's a verbal affirmation that you suggest a woman during the date, at the end of the date, or texting him afterwards?
Yes, I think somewhere like halfway in the middle of the date and just maybe even catching him a little off guard, like physically lean into him. You could even give him kind of the affirmation of, just touching his arm with your hand and verbally then say, you know what, I just wanted to let you know I'm having a lot of fun right now. I didn't really know what to expect, but you make me comfortable and you're really funny too. So thank you for that. Like letting him know that you are comfortable in his proximity, right? Giving him those kind of nonverbal and verbal cues, I think is really important. And it just provides guys like this reason to kind of like take a breath and be like, okay, like, so she doesn't think I'm a total doofus, right? Like I think she actually seems to like me and gives him a little bit of confidence, right? To ask a woman out again, just that little reassurance that really helps. So it could be in the middle or at the end, like, and it could be again, very simple as verbal. I had so much fun tonight. It was really nice. Like I mentioned, how I love hiking. I'd love to show you this trail like in our neighborhood. I think you'd really enjoy it. Maybe we could do that like next Saturday when we're both like not busy at work. And then at that point, the ball is in his court. If he's interested, he'll ask out. If he's not interested, it's not for a lack of trying, right? And to remember that no matter what, there's a lot of fish in the sea, and don't get bummed out if there's no second date. So practice makes perfect, right? And you got to get out there and have lots of first dates and second dates. And I have so many strategies around this too, to just really enjoy the process and learn about yourself. And I think what you were talking about earlier, like just being kind and like showing that person respect, I think it's also a really valuable learning lesson. At the end of the date, if both people realize, like, net, like, okay, you're not feeling this towards me, I'm not feeling this towards you, like, keep it friendly, right? And use that as a growth opportunity to get some feedback. So just putting it out there, like, is there anything like I could have done to maybe improve, or did I say anything kind of funky, or did I do anything? Did I smell, right? Like literally, like just inject some humor in it and try to use that as an opportunity to get feedback. I've seen this really work well for some of my clients when they're out there dating. They're doing dating apps, they're working even with a couple different matchmakers, and they really use that opportunity to just, keep a friendly vibe with the respective date and provide each other feedback. And they learn a lot, and it's a safe forum in some respects.
And it's also a kind thing to do where if someone's asking for feedback, you already know two people aren't clicking in that way, and you know it's just going to be a friendly vibe. It's okay to let your guard down and say, you know what, I had a great time. I'm just probably not really feeling this in a romantic way, but I would love to get your ideas on what could have been different or who knows, right? I love the idea that you also said in the middle of the date is a great time to interject that nice compliment to the man that, hey, you know what? I'm having a good time with you, and smile. And like you said, give him more confidence. And then he'll be probably even better on the second half of the date because now he knows how you feel. So his shoulders are, are a little bit broader and he's sitting a little bit taller. So those are all great tips, Amy. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the important thing too, kind of what we were talking about earlier with the type A, let's say the type A female, or the type A guy, is just flirt, right? We've heard this time and time again, but it's so important to remember the context, remember what this is about, and just, kind of let the proverbial hair down. Like care, but don't care so much to the point where you are analyzing everything in your brain of what to say, what not to say, and like getting like caught up in that, that loop of that kind of like tape rolling through your mind. Instead, try to be in the moment, laugh, flirt, have fun, and just kind of open up about yourself and think about sometimes different subjects that you feel really good about, like competent about, right? You don't have to be necessarily an expert in whatever subject it is. But if you feel good about something that you have some passion about in your personal life, talk about it. Showcase that, because that way you become that interesting person and multidimensional. And that's interesting. People like to be around somebody like that. So don't be afraid to flex that. Like, be that interesting person that is a little bit different from the other person or people that your date has been out with.
So, what would be a good dating tip for a guy who's maybe on the shorter end? He's 5'5", he's always had trouble meeting women, he's not confident in it. He is maybe in his 40s and realized, you know what, I do want a family, but he's an engineer, so he's never really gone out in the dating world or had a lot of success in dating, but he has a good job, he makes good money, he's a good guy to his family. Like, what are some tips that you would give for someone who's inexperienced with dating in their 40s?
Absolutely. So I think, like anybody, whether it's an introverted engineer who hasn't really dated at all, or somebody who does date a fair amount, like get out there and practice. So if for that case study, I would say definitely do the dating apps, because this is a really easy way to just put yourself out there and meet a lot of women and gain that experience under your belt, so you can understand, the different dynamics, how women behave, how men are, the differences between men and women, right? And learning to be a more effective dater. To digress a little bit, like I would certainly tell this individual, make sure you have really good photos done, some lifestyle photos before you even start that dating app profile. And certainly, if then you later hire a matchmaker, you can kind of parlay those beautiful lifestyle photos and portraits that your matchmaker can use. But I would say that that would be really important because we really want to showcase you as this very eligible, successful, intelligent, and importantly, commitment minded gentleman that you are. So start with the dating photos. And then I would certainly say make sure that you are putting yourself in different environments outside of dating apps as well to just start meeting potential single women. So things, that you are interested in, whether it's a sport. So let's say you enjoy running, right? Well, find some meetup that is a running club, better yet, a singles running club, right? Or a walking club. And do things also kind of be a little strategic here. Think about the types of women that you would like to meet. And then I want you to think about where are those women hanging out when they're not at their day jobs. So put yourself in those environments. One idea could be Pilates or yoga, right? Again, kind of thinking about what I would call target rich environments where a lot of women are going to be and healthy women, women into wellness. Center yourself in those environments. Don't be the creepy guy going up to every woman being like, hey, baby, I'm single. Like, are you single? But at least what you're doing is you're putting yourself in those environments and in an organic way, when the time feels right, use your intuition, strike up a conversation. And you could be like, this is my first time here at this yoga class. Actually, it's my first time doing yoga. Do I have my mat set up correctly? Do I need any equipment? Like, just be friendly and curious. But these are the ways that are going to help build confidence and competency around dating that you can parlay into any aspect of life. So I'd say start with some almost lifestyle changes. Start then with the dating apps. Gain some confidence and mastery around this. And after each date, this is what I tell men and women, keep a journal, keep a dating journal. So you can take notes and notes about who you met, like how you showed up. If you feel in your genuine heart of hearts that you showed up well for the date, you were well rested, you were on time and punctual, you were you did everything in your mind and in your power to be the gentleman that you are, then make notes of that, so you can really have that log, that dating log. And then the person you were out with, how did she make you feel? Did she ask you questions? Were there any flags? I want you to really kind of keep account of all of those feelings and actual kind of tangible aspects of the date. As you go through each day and each date, you're going to have this fabulous log and journal as part of your self growth that is only going to contribute to your maximum kind of dating results. So there's so many exciting things that anybody listening can do to really kind of optimize their dating in 2025 and beyond. And so many exciting things, but that kind of those I'd say would be the starting points for that type of individual.
Would you actually encourage him to also meet women that he doesn't find extremely attractive, like just somebody who messages him on the dating app? Should he just go out anyway, just to have practice with dating, practice texting, practice calling her back, just practice conversation, making eye contact, all those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think a very kind of wider spectrum of candidates to me is important. So, for sure, I think as long as somebody is not so in a different stratosphere of attraction where he just can't even focus because he's just absolutely there's no baseline of attraction. But yes, I'm actually a huge believer in, like, I tell my different clients and my matches, like, on that first date, if you feel only 10% chemistry, 10 to 15% chemistry, go out again. Because so many people feel riddled with nerves or they're not presenting their best self. But if it's under that, then you probably know, okay, this is not going to be my person. But in this case, yeah, I think it's a good idea to, go out with people that are going to be a little bit outside of kind of the physical realm of typical attraction. So as to gain those experiences and just practice, like you said, eye contact, conversation, flirting, but be authentic, right? Like, don't, like, if you're net not feeling it, like, don't lead her on, right? At a certain point, you're going to have to kind of be clear. And on that note, like, always close the loop in a gracious way. So this principle applies for both men and women. Please stop ghosting. Please don't do this. Let's all stop this terrible thing. It's not nice, right? And it's just not a kind way to date, especially as we start the new year. So I think the gracious thing and the polite thing for both men and women is to just close the loop. And you can always start with a simple compliment of, I really had a nice time. You taught me something really interesting about like your experience when you were living abroad in London. I had no idea about the history of Big Ben, whatever it is. Then the gentle letdown. Upon reflection, I've thought through things for the last 48 hours. I just don't know if this is a long-term love match, but I wanted to let you know I think you're terrific and I wish you all the best in life, right? So that sort of thing is really kind to do. And for that kind of example of that guy who's maybe testing the waters with a lot of different physical types or personality types, to just make sure that he's being true to himself and not leading anybody on by just kind of practicing and almost like using the woman, because dating's tough, right? And there's a lot of emotion and effort that everybody places into it.
Now, Amy, you've been doing this for almost 21 years. What is one success story that you had with a client where you set them up or her up and you thought they would be a great match, or you're not quite sure if they would have been a great match, but then somehow, some way they ended up being a success story? Do you have something like that where a story that's totally unexpected but ended up like a happy ending?
Yeah, no, I have lots of different stories like that. I'll share one story, and this is really about kind of the importance of affirmations on the date, or in their case, no affirmations. So I set a couple up in San Francisco, and they were both very type A individuals. He's running an investment bank, and she was running a tech company and very well educated. They were in there at the time, they were in their mid 30s and just really dynamic, interesting, very like both very hyper people. So they're always on the go, always on the move. And so set the date up. They met at some cute Italian restaurant, and she texted me like in the cab. This is pre-Uber, by the way, so I'm dating myself. Um, in the cab on the way to the date, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, like on my way, I'm so excited. I'm putting my red lipstick on right now." So she really knew kind of like this is going to be about a date, kind of put the cute dress on, the little heels, like get out of your work shoes, put some pumps on, did the red lips, and just felt like a little bit more alive and date ready. They get to the date, and it was amazing. According to both their feedback, it was sparks and interesting. And she's like, "Oh my God, he's way hotter than you described." And he described her in the feedback as, "Oh my gosh, Amy, she is like so fun and beautiful and all the things." As I was reading their feedback afterwards, there was no indication of them going out again. He said, "Well, she definitely checked all the boxes of, very smart, very dynamic, like what a little firecracker, all these things, so fun." But yeah, I didn't get the vibe that she was that into me. There was no indication she wanted to go out again. And frankly, I kind of got the sense that she's probably dating a lot of guys because she is so eligible End of story. I read her feedback and was like, oh my gosh, Amy, he's way hotter than you described. He's smart, he's fun, he seems really successful. I love that he's commitment minded, but I just didn't get like the vibe that he was that into me. So I'm reading this and I'm realizing, oh my gosh, this is like really fascinating. I contacted him and I said, if she wanted to go out again, would you go out? And he's like, are you kidding me? By all means. Like, she is like the dream woman. And I said the same thing for her. If he was interested, would you go out again? She's like, yeah, but I just didn't get that, the sense. So then I said to her, well, if he is interested, would you go out? Like, and can you make yourself very available? And, hopefully you're in town. And she said, yes. He said, yes. So I said to him, green light, like she's very interested. And he's like, that is so bizarre because I got zero read from her that she was interested at all. And I was like, okay, we'll call her, capitalize on this momentum, seize the opportunity, call her, go out again. And so really the rest is history. I think for me, it proved to be such an important example of for us matchmakers being the liaison between two parties where it's almost as if two ships can pass in the middle of the night and not even signal to each other of kind of they're crossing each other. And in this case there was no signals, like they were attracted, but she didn't vocalize that. She didn't give any nonverbals, and she was probably caught up in her type A kind of boss energy. And that was that. But now they're married and they literally never looked back, right? Ever look back. And I'll share kind of a addition to the story in that, so as their relationship progressed, everything was great until what happened was he got a job offer in Hong Kong. And it was a really tremendous job offer. And they realized, oh my gosh, we are so in love with each other. And what are you going to do? And he's like, well, I'm going to take the job and we're going to figure this out. And so for many months, every other week, they flew back and forth to see each other. She'd fly out to Asia, he'd fly out to the Bay Area, and it became very like all consuming. That's a really, really long flight. And so they realized, like, when push comes to shove, like they couldn't live without each other. She had actually told me pretty early on, she's like, Amy, I love him, but there is no way I'm ever moving to Hong Kong. I don't know why. I mean, Hong Kong's a great place, but that's what she said way back when. So I remember that. And ultimately, she ended up selling her company in San Francisco and moving to Hong Kong, has been there for many years, loves it. They have a wonderful daughter together. And so it's just kind of that example of like, when you're in love with somebody, like love can do funny things, right? And this vision that you have for your life might deviate, it might morph into something different, right? And to stay flexible and be open-minded. And with geography, just be open-minded to the possibilities and kind of let those boundaries come down because magical things can happen.
I love that whole story. And it really goes back to sometimes when I get date feedbacks from a client, it's like he was on a different date than what the women went on. And her feedback is completely different. And I'm like, were you guys going on the same date? Because a lot of times people don't admit that they like somebody or take the time to let that person know how appreciative they are. So if they did not hire a matchmaker in that case, those two people would not be together, right? So it is a huge advantage to kind of have a middleman to help guide you in these things that can ask the tough questions or dig in a little bit more. Because as matchmakers, I feel like we hold so much power if people are just on the fence, kind of like in high school or junior high, when you know that person liked you, you tend to like them back. So it's kind of like that. I mean, I totally can relate to that story where people just need to let their guard down a little bit and be a little bit vulnerable and say, gosh, you know what? I just had the best time with you. What a surprise. Or I would love to go out with you again. And let that be known, right? Because it's almost like on these dates, after the date, you shouldn't question where you stood with that person. You should almost know, yes, I felt like that date was neutral or positive. I would love to see him again. It should just be known and not, well, I don't know actually. And then they just let it go. Like if you weren't there to nudge them, it wouldn't have
Exactly.
happened. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. 100%. So I think though, there's a lot of fear involved for people, right? So the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of letting the guard down, the fear of being one's authentic self, right? And I get that. We all have kind of these masks on and at times walls up and there's many different reasons for that, right? But I think remembering that sometimes if you remember, okay, I'm in the same boat as this person. We're both on this journey together. We're both single. Walk in as if, again, you're meeting that friend, see what happens, be friendly and just a nice person. And really interesting things can happen. And also consider, like, back to what we were chatting about earlier, like if you feel that this is not like your love match and your person, keeping that door of possibility open. I have seen many times where I've told people, okay, keep that possibility open in the sense of just be friendly, right? And keep them as a friend, store them in your back pocket. I love when people think out of the box where as ways to kind of increase the probability to meet other singles, throw a dinner party. Doesn't have to be fancy. It could be a potluck, but invite that guy or that woman to your dinner party or your potluck or your picnic in the park and have them bring two other single people. Through this approach, you might meet the love of your life.
Yeah.
But keeping those doors open, right? And not closing things with kind of, just this coldness or authoritative, dismissiveness, right? It's just being open to life and the possibilities. I think when you do that, especially with the new year, new possibilities, like really great things can happen for anyone.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. One of the frustrating things that have happened early in my career is I set up these great women for this male client and he dismisses them easily, even if it was a scenario where he felt like he liked her, but he didn't pursue her because he feels like, oh, May, you're just going to get me other great matches. And I'm like, no, don't you understand? I like asked 10 women and one said yes. She was one that said yes. Like they sometimes don't know how hard we work and recruit for them that they
Yeah.
think there's tons of fish in the sea. It's so easy, but it's not. It's like if you are intrigued by this one person in front of you, you should go for it and see where it leads and ask her out again. I would love for everyone to date 3 times before you say she's not going to be a good wife or not going to be a good mom to my kids. Like give them a chance, right? So,
Absolutely. I always say 2 to 3 dates and then decide, right? That's so important. But that type of individual, those guys can be tough, right? And sometimes it's the women that are doing that. They want more, 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 more. I think it is the kind of era we're living in of higher volume kind of opportunities. And sometimes people like can sneak through our systems, even though, usually not, but sometimes who's a little bit more of a serial dater type, right? And maybe ultimately not as commitment minded as we hoped, right? So kind of wanting more, better. I call it the BBD, the bigger, better deal. It's exhausting for us matchmakers. It's like, oh, we're working really hard right now.
okay, Amy, thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, please tell everybody what's your ideal client, who you want to contact you to work with you, and what is your niche, if you will.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking. So, my typical client, I would say, is educated, dynamic, interesting. They have different hobbies and passions that fuel them outside of their career, could be any type of industry they work in. And normally, I would say Silicon Valley, but I do represent individuals out of the area. Importantly, everybody needs to be commitment and marriage minded and excited at the possibilities of monogamy and true love. In terms of getting in touch with me, I have a comprehensive content-based website, linksdating.com. That's linxdating.com. I'm also on Instagram at ms.linksdating, and I would love if you follow.
Thank you, Amy, so much for your time. And ladies, if you're out there, contact Amy. Men, if you would love to hire a matchmaker, great track record with finding love for her clients. And I'm always looking for women, Asian women out there to be part of my database. I would love to set you up. It's completely free for women. Please go to twoasianmatchmakers.com. And men, if you need some help with dating and looking for Asian women, I would love for you to contact me.